hello. It's sad boy hours. Men/women of Reddit who went out to buy cigarettes/milk and never came back. Do you ever think about the family you left behind? Do you send them money or regret leaving? What made you go? My grandfather, who I have never met, walked out on my dad. I never really knew anything about him other than he lived in Florida and chose favorites to the extreme. My dad has 9 brothers and sisters he left behind with my amazing grandmother Rose, who I call my grandfather, is another amazing person named Jim. Jim worked at a casket company and listened to my grandmother's story one day at a bake shop, I think. After hearing it, he would send check after check to my grandmother offering help, which my grandmother would never cash and just let build up. When he realized he wasn't losing any money from his bank account, he showed up at my grandmother's doorstep with another check and talked to her. He lived with her after that until the day she sadly died. Jim is 90 years old and still kicking. I love that man more than I can express in words. My grandfather went out while my grandmother was in labor and never came back. She sent the cops looking for him and everything, and when they went to her house he had left a note saying he got his secretary pregnant and he was leaving. He left her with no money, 4 kids, and having never worked in her life. My dad was the one she was giving birth to. He never met his father until he was called to my grandfather's deathbed a few years ago. Edit. To actually answer the question. Frig no. Not until my dad walked into that hospital to see him. I have never seen anything like this. The biznatch who he cheated with stepped in front of my dad before he went into the room saying, "You aren't getting any money." My dad said, "Shove it out your ass. I just want to meet my father." She stepped aside. We walked in and he saw us. His face changes expressions from plain to absolute terror. He began sobbing. How could he know it was his son, you ask? Because they look like freaking identical twins. He barely sobbed out the words, "You look just like me." He tried to say "I'm sorry," but my dad interrupted saying, "I forgive you." This sounds like a scene from a movie, but it is the most precious memory I have of my dad. I have never seen my dad the same way again. He's my personal hero. How could he just forgive him? My dad never had a Christmas because of how poor they were. He did Boy Scout alone. I just don't know how he forgave him. I don't get it. My mom didn't really follow the gonna get 6 LOL be right back route. It was made very clear she was leaving because she was a mom and felt like my siblings and I robbed her of her youth. With that being said, I was 8 years old when it happened. There were warning signs that she was going down that path. She stopped taking care of her kids. We stopped going to school. For me, I was being bullied and it was better to not go than to go and be made a laughingstock. She stopped making food. She'd give us money to go to the convenience store and pork out on Twinkies or something junk food related. My dad was never home because he was working at a prison and often would pull long shifts, which gave my mom time to plan her escape. The internet was starting to become a big thing, so my mom was using it as a tool to find single, younger men and to get them to bring her youth back. She was in her early 30s. Anyway, eventually, my dad got wind of what's going on. It was actually the school that made him realize something was amiss. My mom didn't care about us not going to school, but made clear that should we leave and wander the neighborhood, we should run from people who would recognize us. Well, the principal went to see why we weren't in school. My mom apparently said we were at the park and the principal, real sweet lady, went looking. Sure enough, we were playing on the jungle gym and my dad was called. Once that happened, the next thing I know, my mom was leaving. I remember I was in tears and I just knew I wasn't going to see her again. And I was right. 12 years went by. I went from depressed to resentful to accepting what happened. I talked to her on Skype once, but that was really it. My grandmother had raised me and when I turned 14, I immigrated to Canada where I now reside. November of the 12th year she abandoned me. I found out she was dying of cancer and it was only a matter of weeks before she would die. I hopped on a plane with my ex's mom and I saw her. She wasn't 43 when I saw her. She looked like she was 70. Anyway, I spent a good 5 days with her. We didn't talk much. I was comforted by her presence and she was comforted by mine. It broke my heart to leave her, but I had to go back to work. I'll never forget 3 things though. 1. She said "I love you" for the very first time. 2. She endured great physical pain to get downstairs to say goodbye to me. And finally, how she begged me not to leave her. She died not even a week after I got back. I'll always remember the time I spent with her as an adult and cherish that. I didn't go see her to make things right or whatever. I had learned by that point she made mistakes, and dwelling on the why of it all was getting me nowhere. She left me as a sickly, soft-spoken, crying little girl and saw me for the first time before she died, as a healthy, strong-willed adult. I got a package from my stepdad about a month later. Inside was a pearl necklace that I wear every day and a picture of me when I was 8 years old. With it, there was a small note about how she kept that picture with her all the time and would often wonder about me. My siblings had reached out to her, but I never did. So she had recent pictures of them, but just this one tattered old photograph of me. It made me cry. I know this is a long read, so I'll end it and say that in her case, she may have made some horrific mistakes, but in the end she would have done anything to change what she did. But I also know that she needed to leave because she was abusing my siblings, and I love my mom and always will. My daughter's mother unexpectedly fell pregnant. I hate the unexpectedly fell pregnant, but it's less complicated to say it that way. We weren't together long before, 8 months or so. We talked a lot about going traveling. She'd done a little and wanted to take me to see all these cool places she'd been, and we'd both go see some cool places together. Becoming a mother pretty much seemed like it was the end of the world for her. I tried to be optimistic. Tried making up stories how we'd be cool parents who traveled the world with our kid, and our kid would grow up with massively broad horizons. I don't know if she ever believed that could be a possibility, but eventually our daughter was born. I just wrote and deleted an essay. Even now I don't want to portray my daughter's mother as someone who just abandoned her child, but I'll cut it down. There was no motherly instinct in her. Whether it wasn't there or she just didn't want to be a mother, I don't know. She had her life planned out and a baby frigged it up. After 4/5 months of heartbreakingly never seeing any love for our daughter, I gave her the out she wanted. If you can't or won't be a mother, you know where the fricking door is. Within an hour, she'd packed, called her sister to pick her up, and she left. At first it was tough to find a rhythm to our lives, but I have some good family who helped me a lot. I grew up the youngest of 4 boys. I know frig all about little girls. At the beginning, every couple of months or so I sent messages, emails and / or Facebook. In 3 years I never received a reply, not a word from her since the week she left. Eventually I deleted her from my Facebook, beside hurting for weeks, hoping she'd reply. Her sister showed me a message, telling her she wished I'd stop sending messages. She just want to forget it. It being her daughter, she often referred to her as it when she was pregnant, since we avoided knowing the sex, and even a few times when she was born, until I flipped my crap about it. My daughter is 7 now and is happy and loved. I've kind of always sort of skirted around the subject of mum with her. I went with the story that mummy lives far away, and she wanted you to live here with me where you would be loved and safe, which appeases her, among a few other fairy tale stories I told her. Like mummy is a fairy, she's pretty happy-go-lucky, which I hope she never grows out of, but there's gonna come a time when she's gonna want to know more. Incredibly tempting to go down the road of, your mum's a selfish C-word, but that won't happen. About a year ago, I came to find out she has a little brother in either America or Canada now, with a guy she met in New Zealand. I don't know what to think about that. I don't know whether it's karma or irony. Before I met her mum, I was a bit of a wiener, irresponsible, quick to run if the going got tough. In some respects, I can understand why she left and why others leave their kids. I was there, willing to change my plans for a child if she didn't want that life. I gave her the option. I don't resent her taking it. I'll always resent wanting to forget though. TLDR. My daughter's mother wanted to spend her life traveling rather than being a mother. Not mad at her. I'm doing as well as I can. Thank you for watching. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon through the link in the description. If the video slapped, be sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe for videos every single day. See you tomorrow.